So Trump's concerned that the U.S. is losing too much money having its troops stationed all around the world, and I couldn't agree more. Our massively bloated military budget is just one reason why I think we should pull all the troops back from across the world. We have troops stationed in hundreds of countries, and that's not really doing us any good. And by us, I mean ordinary Americans who don't work in the military-industrial complex and who don't profit off of, all the arms sales and things, and those of us who are not concerned about U.S. global political influence. Now, Trump's not going as far as I am in questioning the very premise of having troops around the world. What he's saying is simply that, hey, if we're going to do this, we should be making some money off of this. Right now, it costs the U.S. to keep troops stationed all across the world. A lot of the host countries will pay some of the costs, but nobody pays enough to cover all of the U.S.'s costs of keeping troops stationed in various countries. The most, I believe, is paid by South Korea, who covers about 80% of the costs, which is pretty good compared to everybody else. Trump, however, is looking at this as kind of a business, if you want to consider the empire a business, which is kind of an interesting perspective. He thinks that not only should all these countries cover all of the costs of the U.S. keeping troops stationed there, but because the U.S. doesn't really gain anything from being there, he thinks that they should pay cost plus. So not only does he want to stop losing money keeping troops stationed around the world, he wants to start making money, turning a profit on these countries. Now, the foreign policy establishment's heads will explode at the thought of this, because, of course, they say, oh, it's not about making money, it's about us doing humanitarian good by, maintaining our global political influence. And how dare you try and make money off of that? That should be America's gift to the world. Of course, this is all nonsense. This is just bureaucratic inertia at work. Once a base is established, it's never going to close because there are people who work in that base, and they're a political interest, and then folks lobby to make sure bases never get closed. It's the same thing within the United States as without. People, every time they try and close a base that's not needed in the United States, what happens? The people who work around that base, the people who work in that base, all call their congressman, and that's a big part of the economy of any congressman's district, and then the congressman makes sure that he gets some thing put into a bill guaranteeing that the base will stay open for another 5 to 10 years or something, and they get a reprieve. And this is what happens all the time. And that's why bases never close. It's not because the bases are performing some kind of humanitarian mission that is indispensable. Now, of course, if Trump were actually able to implement this policy of making countries pay cost plus 50%, okay, so that's 150% of the cost, if he were actually able to implement that, then obviously the vast majority of countries that currently host U.S. bases would not opt to continue that. They would not be willing to host U.S. bases after that because they're not going to pay for all that crap. I mean, a lot of them don't even want U.S. troops there. They certainly don't want to cover the costs, and they sure as hell don't want to cover cost plus 50%. So in effect, if Trump were to implement this policy, it would be a de facto withdrawal from the world, which I think would be amazing. There would be a few places, like maybe Saudi Arabia or Poland, who really, really want to keep U.S. troops, so they might be willing to pay cost plus 50%, or maybe they'd negotiate it down to cost plus 10%. I think that would be realistic. But other than that, you're not going to see a lot of countries that are willing to keep the. You think Germany, the core of the EU, trying to set up trying to be a competitor to the U.S. militarily, which is a joke, but you think they would pay cost plus 150% to keep U.S. troops in Germany? You think Japan would do that? Well, Japan might, but those would be very few exceptions. Most places would say, get the hell out, we're not giving you a dime. And of course, as a result, American political influence across the world would collapse, and we would go back to being a normal country instead of a global hegemon. And then, perhaps the folks in our military would stop dying in pointless wars. Because I'm pretty sure that when you get recruited to the military, they tell you you're protecting America, but none of them ever end up actually doing that. I mean, when was the last time that the U.S. was invaded by anyone? Pretty sure that was the British, and even then the U.S. started the fight. That was the War of 1812. And since then, there has been no war where there were foreign troops that entered the U.S. borders. Certainly not in the Mexican-American War, the Spanish-American War, or World War I, or World War II. or the Vietnam War, or the Iraq War. None of these wars, they never took place within the United States. The U.S. citizens were never in danger. What's the point? But sadly, like most of the good things that Trump says, this will never happen. This policy will never be implemented. He'll never get it through. His advisors, I'm sure, have already talked him down, and he's back to saying, you know what, we should subsidize these troops in other countries even more than we're currently doing. I'm sure that'll be a flip-flop of that magnitude. He'll even give South Korea a price drop from 80% to 30% costs that they have to cover. So if you gained anything of value from this video, please do click the like button and subscribe for more. I will be putting out another video today, and I will keep up daily videos. So I'll see you all in about a few minutes.